here are the things you can do to bring calm and peace to your body so you can rest. It's not telling you how to feel, but it's giving you a pathway forward.
This is the Mindfulness and Grief Podcast, and I'm Heather Stang, author, yoga therapist, and thanatologist. You didn't choose grief, but here you're choosing how to show up for yourself, and I'll guide you along the way. In each episode, you'll experience practical tools and sound advice to help you tend to your loss, honor your love, and rebuild a life where grief, hope, and meaning can coexist.
So today I'd like to first just welcome my co-host, Amanda Palermo. And we decided that it would be really interesting to share with you what the mindfulness and grief system is, because this is what all my books are based on. It's what all of my work with clients and groups and everything else is based on. And yet, I think with the exception of maybe one or two episodes many years ago, I've never really talked about it on the Mindfulness and Grief podcast. And Amanda recently became certified in the first cohort of the Mindfulness and Grief Coach Certification Program. So I thought it would be just really interesting to get both of our views on why have a system for grief in the first place. Like, why are we going to take something that is so unique and individual and nonlinear and somewhat unpredictable, and we know it's not something that has a completion, we don't finish it, and give a structure to work through it? So from your perspective, your personal perspective, how did having that support you?
I was just thinking about this actually, because this system that you use in the grief support group, these steps, the system, it reminds me a lot, because I'm a yoga teacher and I've been practicing yoga for a long time. I've been teaching yoga for a long time. I lead a lot of trainings and have led some trainings in the past. And I always look at everything through a yogic lens. And so to me, it reminds me a lot of the 8 limbs of yoga, which for people that are listening, they may not know what the 8 limbs are, but they might learn more what the 8 limbs are as we go through the system, like through later episodes. But it reminds me a lot of that. And the 8 limbs are there to support yoga students to have a very fulfilling life. And I think that in regards to grieving and grief, having the system is there to support you during I don't want to say it yet, stressful, like a really difficult time in your life. The 8 limbs of yoga are there to support you through all the different stages of your life. And they're there as like a guide and there to help you make skillful choices. So I think that's with this in regards to grief. The system is there to guide and support you through this part of your life that's very difficult, and to help you to make skillful choices when you're grieving.
And to that end, I love that you are putting those two systems side by side, because certainly the mindfulness and grief system is influenced by Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga, along with other things out of the Hindu tradition and the Buddhist tradition, and research, contemporary studies in thanatology, which is the academic study of death, dying, and bereavement. And the way you're putting it as a system to support you is beautiful. It's not here to tell you how you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to feel. And that's what makes this very different than, say, the 5 stages of grief, which I'll spend a moment on. I am deeply moved by the work that Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did for people who were dying. That's who she studied. That's where she came up with those 5 observations that she herself said, these are not all inclusive. This is not empirical. This is just what I noticed from talking to these people who were dying. They didn't come from her having conversations with people who were grieving initially, but they took those 5 stages and packaged them up as a grief experience, which again, her work was revolutionary. Deep bow to her. I'm not in any way disparaging her, but the problem is those 5 stages are about feelings, and not everybody fits neatly into 5 buckets. There's many other things one can feel. And I like the idea for me personally, as someone who loves learning and who, as a Libra, has a hard time making decisions. It can be really helpful to know what to do when. And that's really what this system is about. When you are feeling dysregulated and exhausted and you feel like your nervous system is stuck in fight, flight, freeze, here are the things you can do to bring calm and peace to your body so you can rest. It's not telling you how to feel, but it's giving you a pathway forward.
And I think for me personally, because I can't help but always see my life experiences through that yogic lens, when I was in Awaken doing grief support group, I would always sort of see my own experience that I was having on that particular day through the yogic lens, or through, I would say, oh, this is like in the Yoga Sutras, this idea of attachment causes suffering or can lead to suffering. Of course, you lose your loved one or your person, and that's an attachment there. And then you lose that person. So then, of course, it's going to cause suffering. And so to start to dive deep into that and make sense of it that way, that really, I think, was so healing for me personally. It helped me to make sense of my own experience, a very confusing experience. So I can't wait to like dive into more of that so people can understand a little bit more about the 8 limbs, even if you're not a yogic practitioner or know anything about it. I hope that like I can make it seem, I don't know, enlightening and make more sense maybe, and yeah, more accessible. Yes, because it can be dense.
And I want to pop back to what you just said about attachment causes suffering. I remember talking once to a person who was a yoga teacher, and this is going to probably make everybody hearing this cringe. So I just want to say, when I say this is not my belief. And so he said, what we have to do is get rid of attachment. And that's not what we do here. What we do is we learn how to be with that attachment, given that they are no longer physically present.
Yes, because it's a natural experience. Grief is just a natural reaction to the love that we have for our person. And of course, we don't want them gone. We want them here with us. So to just say, let's get rid of attachment is just not possible. But I think you're right. I think it's about just having that awareness of it and to allow it to be there and work with it. And I think that's what the system is helping us to do, is to recognize our feelings and our emotions and just let it be there, and we can start to like work with it and understand it better. We don't have to eliminate the feelings. All the feelings can be there with grief and coexist at the same time.
And the love gets to stay.
Of course. Oh, yes. Yeah.
So let's look at I'll give a little bit of the academic roots, not to nerd out, but I think
Oh, I like when you nerd out. I like all that.
many of you know I'm a thanatologist. So I have my master's degree in death, dying, and bereavement, and also yoga therapist, which we talked about. And I've gone through my own experiences of grief and loss myself. So while studying thanatology, I learned one of the core, I'll say, theories that are principles, systems. It's really a system. It's a task-based model that we study that's by Dr. William Worden. He's a wonderful grief researcher. And he developed what's called the 4 tasks of mourning. And he is the person who really stresses the idea of working with tasks, things to do, rather than ways of how to be. And so his 4 tasks of mourning, I like to think of as the foundation for which my 8 steps or tasks are built on. So I wanted to share those here because I think they really resonate with a lot of people. So the first task is accepting the reality of the loss. Now, that word acceptance, because of the 5 stages of grief and because of those irritating people who tell you you just need to accept it and move on with your life. And that's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about is the fact of it. And I don't know if you've experienced anything like this, Amanda, but I can remember when right after my stepfather died, like the few days after, there were times where I would go pick up the phone to call him, or I would expect to see him, even though I was also dealing with the fact that he had just died and I was in that grief experience and I knew he died. My brain hadn't quite learned that he was gone. And so that's what we're talking about. Did you have anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's more for me, it felt a shock. I can't believe this person is not, I can't believe she's not here. I can't believe she's not here. And still trying to do the things I was doing with her before, the habits, because I was her caretaker. I was taking care of my mother before she passed. So there were like things I had to do every day. And I would every day have like this knee jerk reaction, like, oh, I have to go make mom coffee, or oh, I have to do this. And then realizing, no, she's not here. And then feeling shock about that. Oh, I can't believe she's not here. So it's like there's yeah, your brain hasn't quite caught on to the reality yet.
And that's what the research shows, is that our brain has to learn. It has to learn that they're not here. And like you said, habits and repetitions. So when we talk about accepting the reality of the loss, that's just the starting point. And it's not about being okay with it or metabolizing it. And then the second task is coping with the painful feelings and emotions, coping with the pain that comes with the loss, which we have experienced deeply, both you and I, many times in our lives. And I'm sure many of the people listening, some of you might be feeling that right now, where they're just these waves of emotion, one after the other, and you don't know how to be or what to do. And that's where the mindfulness and grief system really starts, is coping with the physical ramifications, the emotional ramifications, getting that nervous system to settle a little bit, and then a little more, and then a little more.
Yeah. And I think that's where people start to realize that if they're not making skillful choices around those feelings and emotions, it's then sometimes maybe when people go, I think I need to go and talk to somebody or join a grief group, because the pain and the emotions are just so overwhelming.
Yeah. You said make skillful choices. I can think of, like, when Tom, my stepfather, died, all the unskillful choices I was making on autopilot. drinking too much, eating too much. And I just want to say, whatever choices you're making right now, we're not here judging those choices. But like
No.
you said, eventually you come to a point where you go, I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or I'm scared, or I'm lost, and I want some direction or some help. And that's where people usually do pick up the phone and call a hospice, or they reach out to me, or you reach out to a friend, you start to try to connect, or you pick up a book. It just depends, right?
And the system is the thing that kind of helps you to decide personally for yourself if you're making skillful choices. It's not really for us, right? Like you
Right.
said, it's not for anybody else to judge that. It's more like it helps you to observe yourself and ask yourself those questions and see if like you're, how are these choices impacting your life in a good way or a bad way? But that's for you as the person to decide. And the system helps you to do that.
Yeah. And let's take exercise, for instance. For one person, exercise could be a very skillful choice. For me, when Tom died, one of the things I did is I went and hit tennis balls against a wall, and I would make a lot of noise and be like, oh, thought it was like Serena, and that was my way of getting out that energy and moving my body and focusing first. But let's take someone who might decide they're going to spend 6, 7, 8 hours a day at the gym.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes maybe not healthy, but then there could be somebody who's, say, a bodybuilder for a living, and that is healthy. It just depends on you, what is going to serve you and your body. And it's different for each of us.
Yeah.
And you're right, the system helps you decide. And the mindful piece, when we talk about mindfulness and grief, the whole point is to be conscious of the choices you're making, how you're showing up for yourself. And through that mindfulness, it lets you decide, is this behavior helping me reduce my suffering, or is it adding to my suffering? Again, no judgment, but it puts you back in that driver's seat,
Yes.
gives you some control again.
Absolutely. And you may not even have the answer in that moment. You still might not know it, but it's more about, I think, being with it and like observing it and just letting it be there.
Dr. Warden's third task is about learning to adjust to the many changes that happens when someone is no longer physically present. And that can be things like you said, you don't make the coffee anymore. Or maybe someone has to figure out who goes and picks up the kids, who's going to manage the checkbook, who do I talk to at night when I want to talk about my day. There's so many things that change when an important person leaves your life. There's this void in many areas, and we have to learn how to live our lives and make those adjustments.
Yeah, and it's scary. That's one of the scariest parts, I think, of grief are those changes. And if you're someone who is change is difficult because it turns your whole life upside down. So I can't even begin to tell you how many changes happened in my life that was just overwhelming. It's just overwhelming.
This is why we give you things to do about it. How do you sit with those difficult emotions? How do you still take their advice if it was good advice? How many times have you heard me tell people for their homework, go sit and write a letter from your special person and have them tell you what to do?
Oh, yeah. I'm just thinking about this past week, and you asked me, what would your mom say? Because the change in my life is that I can't go to her and ask her anymore. If I have a decision, oh God, what do I do? She's not there. I have to figure this out on my own. And that was something that you said to me. What would your mother say? I try to think. And it was so interesting to have that thought process in my head. Like, thinking about that, it was almost like I could hear her voice and hear her responding to it. But that's part of the change. Those are the adjustments.
Yes, that's one of many changes. Or it could be practical. It could be seeking out professional help for accounting or taking a cooking class. Like, oh, I remember this someone in a group a long time ago, and his partner had died, and the partner was the one who kept him fed, who did the grocery shopping. And when he came to the group, he was just eating cereal for every meal and losing weight. And it was not good for his body, and he knew it. And so the practical step he took was to sign up for a meal delivery service. So he was getting some greens in, he was starting to get some broccoli in. And then, like much later, he wound up reaching out. He was learning how to cook. And these are those adjustments you have to make that seem so simple to someone who hasn't been through grief. But like the symbolism of having to get meals delivered for him was very hard, but it was also necessary.
It makes me also think of like all of a sudden you become a single parent. Huge adjustment to make in your life to raise children on your own. Maybe, your partner passed or something like that, or your spouse. And that is really difficult.
And that's part of why I really encourage parents to seek out grieving parent groups. And actually, I will put in the show notes a link to a couple podcasts for that, because there's certain type of losses where I think it's really helpful to have somebody who's going through it, whether you've lost a child, whether you've had a traumatic loss, disenfranchised, suicide, homicide, you're suddenly a single parent. This is where communal wisdom, I feel like that task 3, the learning to make these adjustments, part of that is reaching out to a community that is going to understand you and that is going to help give you the practical advice. Not that Awaken is a wonderful group for all types of losses. What I'm teaching are coping skills and mindfulness-based skills. And also, I encourage people to find your group that is going to, like, both are important. Learning how to sit with difficult emotions, learning how to accompany yourself on the journey, learning how to be passionate to yourself. That is what we do wonderfully in Awaken. And also, I can acknowledge I don't have children. I'm not a single parent. So I don't know all the things. And by the way, if you run into any grief therapist or counselor or anyone who says they know everything, they're not going to know it. And at the end of the day, you have to trust yourself. And that is a big part of what Awaken teaches you too, is how to listen to yourself.
Yes. Because every grief is like, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And the common piece is that loss is loss, right? It's that everyone can relate to that feeling of loss. However, how that loss happened sometimes is very, very specific. And sometimes it's nice to talk to somebody else that really gets your personal experience. So I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
And then we'll go on to the 4th task, which is embarking on your new life while maintaining an enduring connection to the person who died. So that continuing bonds piece is in there, and the living your life is in there, which if you are early in grief, that might seem unfathomable. Try to say that again. It can be really hard to imagine what your life will look like. So if you're right now going, that doesn't seem possible, I'm going to just say, don't worry about it right now. That will come. It always comes. It always happens. And we don't always know the exact way that it's going to show up for you, but we do have a pathway to help you get there. But one step at a time. And Warden's 4 tasks just put that down beautifully. I want us to get to what a very brief overview of what the 8 steps are, because you and I are going to talk about this in the next 8 episodes. We're going to focus on each one of these steps. Since you passed the test, what's the first step?
Conscious relaxation. I just passed the test. That's right. I just took the exam and passed the test. Conscious relaxation is step 1. My favorite.
So you want to share a little bit about what its purpose is and how it helped you?
Well, this one to me is the most closely related to yoga because it is designed, conscious relaxation is designed to calm our nervous system, which is what yoga aims to do also. It's calm the nervous system. So obviously when we're going through the beginning stages of grief, or not the beginning stages, it comes and goes, but it really works. It hijacks our nervous system. So we tend to go into this fight or flight mode, and it just provides a little bit more emotional safety by grounding and getting into our body a little bit more too. So some of the practices help to calm the nervous system in this particular step.
So things like anxiety, rumination, insomnia, even things like nausea, muscle pain, these physical somatic symptoms of grief are really addressed first, because I feel these are the things that we don't have to think about. We don't have to process. We don't have to figure it out. We don't have to come up with a meaning. We just do the things, and our body will start to come back into a state of equilibrium much quicker than if we didn't do that. And this is really important in early grief because your immune system is challenged. It's really easy to get into accidents. You're exhausted. You need sleep. So right off the bat, we take care of your body.
Yes. And I'm sure you're going to go into this when we discuss it more in depth, but my favorite thing that I really enjoyed learning about the relaxation response, and I think the sleep sanctuary, creating a sleep sanctuary is probably was so beneficial to me in my early stages of grieving, because you're just so tired and then you can't sleep at night and it's just, you're anxious. And then it's so the sleep sanctuary is like a really great thing.
We will talk about that next episode then for sure. So then we have mindful awareness. And a lot of times mindfulness is thought of as clearing your mind, and that's not really what it is. It's about learning to be with what's really happening. And I know that can sound a little daunting because you don't necessarily want to be with what's really happening. And this is where you start to learn how to move back and forth between the focusing practices where you can rest your attention on something neutral, that in the conscious relaxation step, to widening out your awareness to how am I really feeling in this mindful awareness step, so that you can then decide how you want to take care of yourself in the moment. It's not being present just to be present. It's being present so you can tap into your resources and your wisdom and learn things to do to reduce the suffering.
And I think also because our mind tends to pull us into the past with grief. So you're thinking about the past, and then there's this anxiety about the future. And it's very hard to be present, and almost unrealistic to be present. So I think this idea of just focusing on something that doesn't cause stress, practicing one of those focusing exercises is really beneficial.
Yeah, we time travel a lot. And step 2 is about coming into what's really here. So step 3 is probably one of my favorites. And that is compassion for all. And a lot of times we really are focusing on self-compassion, because for many of us, it's easy to be compassionate towards other people, but not to ourselves. And yet in grief, you really will benefit from self-kindness and from common humanity and from being able to be with your pain in a way that no one else can, because they're not with you 24/7, 365.
I'm excited to talk about this one when we get to it because this was very actually quite eye-opening for me as a yoga teacher because throughout the years that I've been teaching and practicing, you hear that word used a lot, compassion and empathy. And I have found that people switch those two and use them interchangeably. And I don't think that there's a solid understanding that there is a difference between the two.
Empathy is the first step in compassion. Compassion is what gives you the action to actually ease the suffering, whereas empathy can keep you stuck in feeling, whereas compassion can help you soften and tend to the feeling. It's very powerful.
I think this one is going to be really great when we get there to dive into it, just to bring clarity around that. Because it was confusing for me, even, and to learn to practice compassion towards myself wasn't as easy as it sounds.
And then the fourth step,
skillful courage.
Skillful courage. This is about being able to balance vulnerability and the ability to stay, the ability to be strong, and to understand you can't really separate the two, that it takes a lot of courage to allow yourself to curl up in the bed and cry really hard and feel the feelings. That takes so much courage. And yet you're also being vulnerable. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to, say, stand up for yourself or to set a boundary.
Yeah, that's a big piece. For me, that was a big piece in skillful courage. Yeah, absolutely. And that the vulnerability is strong, it is strength. So I think and also having faith that it's not going to be there forever. The feeling that you're just not in a good place, or that this feeling of grief is going to stay forever. It is going to stay forever, but it's always changing.
Because grief isn't a feeling, is it? To me, grief is an umbrella term for countless feelings, because in grief is love, is happy memories, the devastation they're not here, the fear, the hope, like all of that is under it. And it's that when you allow yourself to feel the difficult feeling that's showing up right now, longing, yearning, regret, guilt, whatever, that you're not going to be combusted by it, even though it feels that way in the moment. That's what skillful courage is all about, is learning that you can let yourself go into the feeling and into the dark and into the hurt. And that by letting yourself do that, you're going to emerge out of it. Whereas if you carry that around all the time, to use a Bard phrase that I don't know who originally said it, emotions that we don't tend to go down into the basement and lift weights.
Oh, that's my favorite. I wrote that down I don't know when you said it, but you did say it and I wrote it down. I said, this is like it.
Think about going into work. Again, a lot of listeners might have this experience where you wake up and you feel like you need to power through the day because you have to get that paycheck and you need to act like everything's okay. And so you don't let yourself cry or feel, and you go into work and you feel like you're stuffing it down. And then you wind up having this outburst at an inopportune time, which I'm not saying that's good, bad, right, or wrong. That just is what happens. Whereas sometimes allowing yourself to let the feelings move through you, you can then move a little more freer. Of course, by the way, I'm the girl that just cries spontaneously in public during meals if I get triggered and if I'm in a grief period, or so there's absolutely no judgment, just camaraderie in that. So let's go to the next one, which is getting unstuck. There are things that I call the inevitables, the things that I hear most often from clients. Not all the time. And again, this is not empirical, but the first inevitable when I usually first meet somebody is, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And then there's three of them really. Another one is, but I was doing so well. And this comes after many months or a year or two or three where somebody feels like they have been able to work the system and, yeah, I'll say manage emotions in a generous way. Again, we're not trying to make us all like Stepford wife grievers where but where you feel like you have a handle. And then you get hit with a grief wave and you feel like you're back at day one. And this often will happen around an anniversary, or somebody says something, or you have a child's wedding coming up, or who knows what it is, and feel like you are in those early acute days of grief again. And I thought I was doing so well. I thought I was okay. And this is so normal, but it feels so abnormal and so scary. And this is where people start to feel like they're stuck, even though they're not really stuck.
I was kind of laughing when you said, but I was doing so well. And I'm laughing because at myself, because I've repeated this to myself so many times. I've had that happen. And I've said to myself, like, oh, you know what? And you were doing so good.
And same. Oh, and by the way, once you become a grief professional, I should have it together. I know all this, but that's not how it is, because we are human and we love and we care. And so we have to wipe that expectation out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're not you're not stuck actually. It feels like that, but that's not what's happening. I think sometimes too, maybe people think there's a time frame on grief. I should be better by this time. I shouldn't be sad anymore. Oh, it's been so then when you do have one of those grief waves, that thought might pop up.
Exactly. That is a big part of it. So it's both experiential and temporal in a way. And the way we address this, actually, each step is my favorite because I actually really love this one too. This one is about shifting perspectives, and we have some journaling practices and things that we'll talk about in that episode as well. But most people aren't stuck. Most people are just experiencing a difficult time that's coming back around. So after we do these first five, so we have conscious relaxation with mindful awareness, compassion for all, skillful courage, and getting unstuck. These five are really teaching coping skills and self-care, these first five. The last three are really helping you address the next inevitable, the third inevitable, which is, who am I now? I don't even know who I am. And step 6 is you in relationship to the person who died, and it's called continuing bonds,
which is one of my second favorite.
This one is so sweet because it teaches you how to carry the relationship into your life if it was a relationship that was healthy for you, right? Or somewhat healthy, because some people have challenging relationships, difficult estrangements, ex-spouses. And so we have some space there too for you to really acknowledge what you want to let go of. Or in some cases, like me with my stepfather who had bipolar disorder, and I'm picking him today. I have other losses, but he's just showing continuing bonds is right here. He's here. He had
Yeah.
bipolar disorder and he was very difficult sometimes. And he was so loving other times. And there were things he did that at the time seemed unforgivable that I've let go of those things and I hold the things that I want to now. And that did not come overnight. That came through actually doing the grief work. It came through learning certain techniques from other grief therapists while in training. And it's a really powerful step because it helps you get comfortable saying their name. If other people are saying, why are you still talking about them? It helps you figure out ways to weave them in to your life. It keeps that conversation going, which I know has been super important for you too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This is one of my second favorite one. I think continuing bonds has really helped me to carry my mom with me differently, getting used to carrying her with me differently. I think that's the hard part, or has been the hard part for me. I wanted to carry her with me like when she was alive, like here. But I think that's where this step is just really powerful for me. It was.
And part of that relationship with them leads naturally to your relationship with you and how you see you. And that leads us right into step 7, which is allowing transformation, because we know that grief changes us. It can make us sadder but wiser, for sure. And it can also teach us things. It can teach us about ourselves. And since the mindfulness and grief system is really a learning system, it teaches you how to care about yourself and how to see the parts of you that are worth caring for.
I think some of the journaling prompts that go along with this step are really good. They're great because you can actually start to see it. They help you to look back and see how things have changed, how you have changed. And like maybe there is no change in certain areas, and that's okay too. I think it's just allowing whatever's there to be there. But it's those journaling prompts that I think I really enjoy doing.
We do a lot of journaling in this step because it is about looking back. And one of the things that we do is a journal review where you actually read back through your journal. When I first did this, when I was first creating this system, it was in an in-person 8-week setting. And even though they had only been with me for 8 weeks, because the assignment was on the 7th week, they came into class. And then the homework is you go home and you read through your 8-week journal that you've kept. And that's a short period of time in grief. And I want to stress, we're not saying that people are metabolizing all these 8 steps in 8 weeks at all. It takes a while, but they're learning what they have available to them. So you're learning.
Yes.
A lot of people are maybe still in step 1 or step 2 or in acute grief, but now they know that they can look at themselves through this allowing transformation. And even in that short period of time, people go back through their journal and be like, wow, when I first got here and I had a difficult emotion, I didn't know what to do and I felt overwhelmed and I was scared at the fact that I even had it. And now I'm able to be with myself during it. That's huge growth. Now, we would never trade that for our person. We'd rather have our people back. But given the circumstances, it's good to know that you can do that for yourself.
And also, I think it's important to say too that all the steps are like choices. Like it's if you don't feel like you are ready to do any of those things, or like the journal prompts and allowing transformation, or the stuff that goes along with continuing bonds, if you don't feel like you're ready to do those things, you don't have to do them. Because I remember going through a couple of them and then I was like, I don't have the energy for this right now. Like, I'm just going to stay with conscious relaxation for a while, or they're all choices.
Right there, what you said, I don't have the energy for this. That is mindful awareness and self-compassion in action.
Yeah.
And that is the practice. It's not forcing yourself to do something you're not ready to. And then we have step 8.
Perpetual mindfulness.
How do you describe perpetual mindfulness?
The way that I see it is that, and again, that thought in my mind of keep practicing comes into this. That's how I connect it. It's like with yoga, you're always practicing yoga. There's not really ever going to be like it's something that you just do all the time. You're practicing it all the time. It's never going to be something that you're like good at or you're going to perfect it. It's not like that. It's a guide, it's a practice to support your life. And I've always said to students like, "Oh, keep practicing. You'll understand more if you keep practicing." And I feel like perpetual mindfulness is the same. You're just continuing to practice all of this and implement implement the system into your life. And you just practice at it and you just keep going because you're learning how to live your life in a new way.
That's exactly it. It's grief doesn't end, and neither does your practice. It changes. It becomes less about their death and more about their life. It becomes less about the acute pain of grief and more about how do I remember them and honor them. And yet those waves are going to come up and other life stressors are going to come up. And we talk about this, you and I anyway, all the time, how these steps don't just apply to grief. They apply to any kind of stressor and they help you live more fully and connect more fully. And
it's the tools that you're taking with you. So now like if you've gone through all the steps and you've learned the whole system, the mindfulness and grief system, now you have these tools to carry with you. So when you're having a grief wave, you can recognize it and say, "Oh, okay, I'm going through a grief wave. What is it that I'm feeling?" You know how to check in with yourself. You have practices that you can do to get you through whatever this grief wave that you're in. And it's the same thing with the 8 limbs of yoga. It's the same thing. They're tools. It's a guide so that you're living your life. And if you have stress that comes up, you turn towards those limbs of yoga that help to guide you through that tough time in your life, every day in your life. It's tools for self-care.
that's exactly what it is. So if I were to, on the spot, define it, the mindfulness and grief system is an evidence-based toolkit from Hindu and Buddhist traditions and thanatology that help you cope with the pain of loss, care for your grieving heart, and learn how to live fully again without denying your pain.
I think that sums it up. Yeah, definitely. I don't have anything else to add because I think that explains it so well.
I guess I can pass the test too. By the way, there is no test for grief. There's no test for grief. It's just learning how to metabolize it into your life.
Just going back to it just popped into my head. Why have a system though? To get back to that, a thought occurred to me. I heard a woman on social media, and I don't remember her name, so I can't give her credit, but she did compare grief to a spider web. And she said it just slowly permeates through your entire life. And I thought that analogy, that metaphor was so powerful because it's like starts with the loss of the person, your loved one, or whoever it was. And then it just does start to affect not just yourself, but your immediate family, your friendships, might go into affecting your job. It might go into all these areas. And you don't really know that's going to happen. Like you don't really realize that in the moment. And I think that's why it's so important to have a system to really help support that, because it goes deep. It's not just about, I'm going to sit here and you're crying, and it's not that. It's so much more than that.
I think that's a beautiful metaphor, and I agree with you. It touches so many parts of who you are. And I'm sure we'll get to talk about that as we go through the 8 steps more in depth over the next 8 weeks. And I also think for me, I really resonate with what the grief researcher Mary Frances O'Connor says about grief being a learning experience, that we are learning how to grieve. And if we look at grief through that lens, because we've been taught how to learn our whole lives, that it makes it feel a little more manageable than if it's just this, you're dropped in the middle of the forest with no map. This is the map back to yourself, back to your person.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for being here, Amanda.
Thank you for having me along this journey.
And would you mind sharing with our listeners where they can find you on your website, socials?
You can find me on Instagram under Amanda Palermo 108. And you can actually just direct message me on Instagram. That's the best way to get a hold
Wonderful.
of
And
me.
all that will be in the show notes. I thank you all for being here. I thank you, Amanda, and I look forward to future conversations.
This brings us to the end of today's episode. If you found it helpful, please follow the show and consider leaving a review. It helps others find their way here when they need support the most. Then head on over to heatherstang.com, where you can join my Awaken Grief Support community free for 14 days. You'll meet with me and other kind-hearted members several times a week. Get access to the Mindfulness and Grief course, plus guided meditations, journaling prompts, and more to help you navigate grief. If you are a grief professional or volunteer, you can also learn about my Mindfulness and Grief Coach certification. I'll teach you how to share the Mindfulness and Grief System with others, and just as importantly, how to walk the talk and care for yourself along the way. I'm so glad you chose to show up for yourself today. May these teachings benefit you and those you love. Be gentle with your heart and come back soon.